Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, and this podcast is dedicated to individuals who own and operate their own successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax businesses. It's here in this podcast that we try to address topics that range from a variety of topics, such as marketing, selling, pricing, but all the way through to client retention, client onboarding, and client relationships. And today's going to be no different. We've got an expert on for today that I think you're going to quite enjoy because we're going to be talking about exit strategies, not only exiting our own businesses and getting the most from what it is we've worked so hard to build over the years, but at the same time, as accounting professionals, we're working with business owners. And what can we do as accounting professionals to help them as they're building their business is so critical. So today's guest is Scott Snider. Scott is the president of Exit Planning Institute, EPI, and the operating partner of Snider Premier Growth, a small family investment company. Scott is a nationally recognized industry leader, growth specialist, and lifetime entrepreneur. He actually launched his first business at the age of 17, and at age 24, he sold it to a strategic buyer. This was his first exit. And then at that point, joined his father, Chris Snider, in private exit planning and M&A firm Aspire Management. Now, with their passion for business strategy and serving business owners and advisors alike, Scott and his father purchased the Exit Planning Institute, introduced the value acceleration methodology, wrote an award-winning book called Walking to Destiny, and effectively increased the business's size by 10x. Now, as an exited business owner himself, Scott's passion is helping business owners create significant companies while aligning their personal financial plans and helping the owner find and tap their personal purpose. He and his EPI team achieve this through educating professional advisors who surround themselves with business owners during this journey. Now, this is something that's obviously very professional, but on a personal side, Scott is very involved in his community and at the same time was a former professional indoor soccer player and team owner of a major arena soccer league team. So this is going to be fun. We've got a lot to talk about here, Scott. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, this whole idea of exits. I know a lot of business owners have good reason to start their business. There's numerous reasons that cause them to go out on their own. But what do you find are the normal things that lead a business owner to ultimately realize they need to exit and now's something they need to be considering?
Yeah, so I think a few things, especially today, right? Last year in 2021, we had such a great M&A market, so we saw a lot of businesses and business owners exit. So I think maybe a few things are in play. So one is just age, right? I think if you're particularly looking at the baby boomer generation, the average boomer is 67 years old. I think that they're just starting to say, look, there might be something else I want to do in life, and I think it might be time to harvest likely the value out of likely my largest asset in my personal financial portfolio, which is my business. So I think a lot of it is age. I think that if you look beyond just age, I think it's kind of a little bit of market timing. Valuations are still high this year. And I think that many people are saying, look, if you've owned a business for 20 plus years, I think you have an amazing ability to probably handle numerous types of crisis, right? Whether it be a pandemic or a great recession, an internet bubble, whatever that is. And I think if the market's high and you're looking and you have a great business, it's probably time to think about coming to market. Though I think that many of those business owners, right, begin to now struggle because although they spent 15, 20, maybe even 30 years growing something that's what we say is likely really successful, they end up finding that they don't have something of significance. So they're kind of backtracked a little bit and have to look at, okay, well, now how long is it going to take? And what do I need to do to actually not just create a business that's highly valuable, but something that also kind of aligns to my personal and financial goals, right? These three elements that you kind of mentioned when opening up, these business, personal, and financial goals that for me and the team here that we're pretty wildly passionate about helping business owners align.
You know, I liked how you started by saying that there's a lot of age involved with this because some describe what's happening right now in the economy as a huge wealth transfer as these people age out and look to change their situation in their life to now retire. And so there's this ginormous wealth transfer that's happening where younger people are acquiring these businesses and so forth. So I appreciate you bringing that up. The second thing is with regards to selling the business, you mentioned how many of them have in their own minds this construct of a wealthy business. It's their nest egg or their golden goose.
Yeah.
And when they're finally at that point of wanting to assess the value of the business, that valuation doesn't reflect what in their minds they've built. They put all that blood, sweat, equity, time, and effort into that business, and what they're being told oftentimes that it's worth doesn't reflect what they thought it might be. And I think that's a realization for so many. So here's one of the questions I wanted to ask is, as a business owner, when they come to that, are there things that they can do to actually increase the value of their business?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely, right. I think that we have a methodology that we created that you mentioned in opening up called the value acceleration methodology. But I think it's a critical kind of pause point, right? Is that a lot of business owners, for the business owners or the business owners or the professional advisor community that might be listening, we believe that exit strategy is business strategy. There is nothing different, right? So I think for the average boomer, right, that is 67 years old or so, they have a smaller time frame. To your point, Roger, they're getting there and they're saying, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be. It's worth a lot less. And I only perhaps want to have 2, 3, maybe 5 years to build some value. So they're going to focus the next 3 to 5 years on that. Now, I think the major opportunity is changing the way business owners think into Generation X and the millennials. So the next wave of business owners that are coming through. In fact, if you looked at the lower middle market last year, 43% of the lower middle market is owned by people that are 56 years old down to about 36 years old. So that typical maybe upper end of the millennials and certainly those Gen Xers. I think the opportunity is huge for advisors to start educating those business owners on what it takes to exit, so that when they go to exit, they're not just kind of like slapped in the face. Like, man, I've built this thing for 15, 20, 35 years. What do you mean it's not worth anything? Like, I have a nice home. I have a good life. I have great customers, great employees. I have a solid P&L. I have a solid balance sheet. Year over year, I'm really successful. What do you mean this is something of significance? What do you mean it's not valuable? So I would suggest that those folks really kind of change their mindset on exit. Exit is frankly right now. I think that if you bring exit planning into the present, not only do you create a more successful company year over year over year, but you're always creating one that's highly valuable, so that frankly you can kind of exit on your own terms, right? Whether that be the traditional, okay, I feel like I'm at retirement age, it's time for me to retire and from the business world and maybe get into other stuff. Or you're like me when I was 24 years old and I got a really great offer from a synergistic competitor type buyer that said, Scott, we love what you do. We love your clients, your equipment, we love your employees, your culture. Can we buy something? Can we buy this from you? So, or from the negative side, I tend not to try to stay away from the negative, but it is a reality for a lot of us that a lot of owners face what we call these 5Ds, that kind of involuntarily force us out of our business: death, divorce, disability, partner disagreements, or stress on the business. These things that unfortunately force us out of our company. So I guess the message that I have is there are things that you could be doing across what we call all three legs of the stool: business, personal, and financial. Mm-hmm. My big calling, Roger, is don't think about it as something I do upon wanting to exit. Think about it as something I need to put into my company culture and into my life really on a daily basis.
So I'm going to just stress what you've been kind of alluding to. I'm going to say alluding to because you've just said it,
sure.
Which is there is in so many people's minds a distinction between exit planning and business, running a business, mm-hmm. when in reality, you said it right. They should be one and the same. Right. You should be running a business that is independent of you, such that if there were an opportunity to sell it, it's ready to be sold, period. It can run autonomous of the business owner, and that requires that there are a variety of SOPs, standard operating procedures in place, processes, key employees. There's a variety of things that the business should be doing today, mm-hmm. that if done correctly, really frees the business owner to really live a lifestyle that they want, earn an income that they would prefer. And so that introduces what I think is so exciting about this conversation, how as accounting professionals, we can be advisors for business owners, regardless of what stage in business they are in, to build the optimal business that they should have. So as accounting professionals, oftentimes we're kind of toying with the idea, considering, and perhaps jumping into this concept of being a business advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a lot of what you're describing is a strategy, a methodology that can be implemented with a business owner that literally can make the business worth so much more today when implemented correctly. Would you agree?
I would 100% agree. And I believe that the accounting firm, the CPA, is already one of the owner's most trusted advisors. So we do a lot of research, and the state of owner readiness, time and time again, I don't care if you're looking at national research, regional research, when the owner is asked, who is your most trusted and valued advisor, the biggest chunk of owners, it's about 42%, say they're CPA. And so I love the accounting firm because typically they have a pretty robust set of services. They're pretty tied in and almost entangled into what the owner does. You're likely considered the most trusted advisor. And now that owner is going to start, particularly that boomer that might be looking to exit more rapidly here, is going to likely turn to that accounting firm or that CPA and say, hey, you've been around for 30 years with me, growing this company as one of my most trusted advisors. Now I'd like to focus on how do I harvest the value from this asset? So undoubtedly the CPA is positioned well in that seat at the table. It's just the question that I have for many accounting firms is, are we thinking about exit strategy as business strategy, right? Are we deepening the relationship? Or for family companies, is the CPA firm or the accounting firm deepening the relationship with the next generation of family business owners inside of that company? And are we equipped to answer that call, right? Do we have the credentials, the knowledge, the skill set, the network, the resources to really help a client not just grow value in their business, which is typically where the CPA kind of comes in on the company side, but also help the owner position themselves personally for that transition and then have a solid personal financial plan. You mentioned at the top of the show that talked a little bit about kind of closing that wealth gap for the owner. So I think frankly, the accounting firm is positioned well to handle all three. Your natural way in is likely in the business because frankly, you're already there.
Yeah, the accountant, and I've experienced this numerous times, is asked, so really, how much is my business worth? Right. They're looking for a valuation, and they presume that with the P&L and with the balance sheet, we can give a number, and we can.
Right.
But there are different ways to value a business, and so there are different ways to come to a number. And obviously, in some business settings, whether it's a strategic buyer and so forth, different numbers make sense. So the question I want to now ask you is, you were talking about how accountants are in a perfect position to be that trusted strategic advisor. What are some of the key areas of business outside of accounting that could be advisable, that we could actually help address within the business?
Yeah, I mean, that's if you think about how robust an owner's need in, right? So you're looking at all kind of functional specialties. I think the core is your accounting, your legal, your personal financial advisor, your growth and your strategic advisor. But then if you think about it, particularly, frankly, if you look at the accounting firm, what I also love about them is that a lot of accounting firms have workforce management. So they're doing payroll and things like that. They have perhaps even a financial planning or wealth management arm. A lot of accounting firms, the accounting firm I use today for my own business, has an IT arm that provides some like outsourced IT services to us, as well as some cybersecurity for our business as well. So I think that, and then you just peel the layer of the onion back, right? You can get in all the functional stuff, the marketing, the human resources, other things that power the owner's business. And then again, I haven't even touched on the personal financial.
Yeah, when I'm working with the businesses, there's really 8 things that I typically try to focus on. Sure. And with those 8 things, there's really some great conversations to be had because beyond the accounting, we're talking about, is there a key employee? Is there a key vendor? Is there a key customer that the client is actually dependent upon as they run their business? And from an accounting perspective, it's obvious that we might be able to do a pretty strong and robust budget and forecast, do a pro forma, and basically see what the trajectory of the business is that can really help in the valuation. But we need to get outside of that and also look at a variety of things that may relate to vertical growth within the business, geometric growth within the business. There's just so many other things that as accounting professionals, we can extend and offer advisory services in to help them build a well-rounded business. And I enjoy that. I enjoy those conversations. Those are actually very, very fulfilling. So if you were to look at the advisor of the future, what does that person look like?
That's such a great question. I think that the advisor of the future particularly comes with this holistic mindset, right? Even though they might not we keep kind of dancing around this, what we call this three legs of the stool: business, personal, and financial. I think all advisors have their specialty, but the advisor of the future not only is an expert in that particular field, but is trained in a way and thinks in a way with a holistic mindset that embraces business, personal, and financial. They believe that exit strategy is in fact business strategy. And they believe that the owner also equally needs to plan for the next act or phases of their life. So with that kind of that more holistic mindset, now they come into saying, I'm also a connector of people. Because there's no way that the one advisor is going to do all of that work. Why the advisor of the future, which I believe is the most trusted or most valued advisor, says, look, Scott, look, I looked at your business. And I looked at your business and I saw that you have a sales strategy problem, and that's not necessarily my role. However, I have this great consultant that I'd like to introduce you to that could help build some value, mitigate some risks inside of that, your sales component of your business. Or, hey, look, you're in business with your dad, and it doesn't seem like you and your dad are jiving, and we believe that we need to bring some harmony to the family and to the family business. It's not my role, but I know a really great family enterprise advisor that I'd like to bring in. So again, they're holistic minded, and they're a connector. They're a connector of people. I think that particularly as you go down the generations into Gen Xers and millennials, and you looked at those generations' characteristics, that fits well with what those people want as well. But a connector of people, a holistic minded person, understanding that the way to exit is equally important between business, personal, and financial. And that exit strategy is business strategy. There's nothing different.
I like how you brought in this idea of being a connector, because really we want to be a master of a specific trade. We want to be an expert in something rather than a jack of all trades, theoretically. And so as you were describing these key players that could be very helpful in the business, admittedly, you've got to have a good business lawyer. You've got to have a good financial planner to help the business owner as they're taking that wealth in. You've got your business advisory that you're bringing to the table as an accounting professional, perhaps. But at some point, there's probably a good time to introduce a broker, let's say. And all of a sudden, this key group of people are going to bat for that business owner. And they've got basically this team that you could be very influential in creating. So I like how you kind of described it as being the great connector. But you also started off by saying mindset. I mean, there's a number of mindset things that have to shift when a business owner is looking to sell the business. And I've got a few thoughts on this, but what are some mindset shifts that you can think of?
Yeah, so I think there's a few that advisors have, and that I think that, frankly, that advisors and business owners kind of share. We talked about one. The one shift is that exit strategy is business strategy. It's nothing different. Time and time again, owners are thinking that it's something that you do 18 to 24 months before you want to go sell your business, almost like preparing your house for sale. So that's kind of one shift. The other major shift is that there's I think for business owners in particular, and really their advisors, we talk about this from an advisor standpoint, tax number versus real number. From an owner's perspective, I describe this as an income number versus a value number. I think time and time again, when you look at owners' dashboards and running their company, they're reporting on leading or lagging indicators that really refer to profitability of the company or revenue generation, income generation. They're not necessarily reporting on, well, how much is my business worth and how much is it ticking up, right? How am I getting a bigger or higher multiple? And so I think another mindset shift is income generation versus value creation. I think that if you just concentrate on income, you might not get the value, but if you start concentrating on value, you will definitely earn more income, and as such, also get more value into your company. And then, last but not least, I think it's kind of what we were talking about with the advisor's role. Both business owner community and advisor community need to be able to adopt kind of a common framework
Hmm.
that we all approach together, right? Again, we're not necessarily doing each one of the components of the framework or the process, but we understand one holistic approach to the way we go about growing companies of significance. And so I think that those are some of the shifts in mindset that both owner and advisor need to have.
I'm going to take what you just shared and I'm going to put it in a very simple phrase. Some people will have heard of this, but I'm going to add to it. Many people are familiar with the statement, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but I'm going to add to it that valuation is peace of mind. And what I mean by that is everybody looks at revenue, they pound their chest saying how great things are with the growth that they're experiencing, whether or not profit is exhibiting that same growth. So profit is where the sanity lies, but the peace of mind that comes from looking at how your business is being valued. I look at, coincidentally, each and every month when I look at my financials, let's say EBITDA. I've got an EBITDA number that I'm watching, and I'm looking at a variety of other numbers that are indicators of my business valuation that are critical to me because I want to see what's the return on equity, for example. Is it changing? All these things that I'm watching are just indicators of whether or not I'm increasing or maintaining the valuation of how I perceive the value to be worth or the business to be worth. And those things are numbers like you were indicating, leading, lagging indicators, KPIs, ones that we should be seeing with the client. And the beauty of being an accounting professional is these are numbers we can provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that the accounting firm or the CPA is positioned so well, right? Is that they already have their hands on all of this information. It's putting it together in a way that, again, talks more about value and transition than it does about just growing the business year over year.
Yeah. Now I'm going to do a little transition here because I'm going to set you up nicely for a good talking point here. I do a lot of talking to accounting professionals on building what we refer to as the premier accounting firm, hence the title of the podcast. Sure. And in that, I identify three key services that are what I consider to be core to a full service firm. It's bookkeeping and accounting, tax planning and preparation, and then CFO and advisory services. And oftentimes the accounting profession is intrigued by becoming more and more engaged at that CFO and advisory level. And the opportunity to get involved with the business beyond just the accounting is so great. And the perspective we can bring as accounting professionals to the business, being their advisor, is huge, and we can be paid handsomely for it. So what I want to bring up here is I know you talk about riding the exit wave, and we started this conversation with this transitional wealth that's going on. So many businesses are looking to exit. There's going to be mergers and acquisitions here in the next 5-10 years that if we could get involved, we would see numerous opportunities to participate, not just as accounting professionals, but advisors in these transactions and get the introductions we need to the new owners to help them with their businesses. How would you add to that talking point with this concept of riding this exit wave that exists out there?
I mean, I think you said it well, right? Particularly for the, building that premier accounting firm. That premier accounting firm will ride that wave, and they'll ride that wave by positioning what I would consider like value billing or value enhancement type services to business owners. Again, if you think about the robust or diversity of an accounting firm, they're just well positioned to take advantage of that wave, whether it be from an accounting standpoint, an estate planning standpoint, an M&A standpoint. You get to more of perhaps the softer issues like what we talked about, the connecting of people, positioning, the positioning of the exit planning team. I think that they need to embrace exit planning services into their firm, again, which is holistic in sense, and be well positioned to be that advisor of the future. The advisor of the future will be wildly prepared to see that wave. I think to your point, over the next 5 years alone, the baby boomers who own about 51% of the lower middle market companies will without doubt see transition. So the question, I think, for the premier accounting firm or the firm that wants to be the premier accounting firm, what are we doing to service those immediate needs of those owners? And how are we positioned as this entangled, most trusted and most valued advisor so that the next owner, whether that be an individual buyer, whether it be the employees that buy it or a private equity group or another corporate kind of strategic buyer, whoever that buyer might need or might be says, man, this accounting firm is so entangled inside of this business, we couldn't possibly think about doing business without this firm. So they go along for the ride with the next owner. And then on the internal side, for the family business, on the family business side, what is the accounting firm of the future doing to get to know and build that relationship that they have with the first generation? What are they doing with the second or third generation to keep that family business alive and well, and to make sure that they're ingrained or entangled into what they're doing? And I think that the accounting firm, again, has, and certainly the premier accounting firm, has that great ability to embrace all of those types of services that are exit planning centric, if you will, and get on that surfboard, man, to get on that wave and ride it through.
As you were describing that, I was thinking of some of my financial planner friends that have their businesses, and they use a similar philosophy. They get these very wealthy clients, people that they're using to build their portfolio, but they're so smart because what they do is they go to the children of the wealthy people, take them on as clients, not because there's any wealth there, not because they have a lot to invest, not because they're being very strategic in their exit planning or in their retirement, but they know that when the client who has the wealth passes away, who is the likely person to inherit it? And if they're not connected with the children, they run the risk of losing those funds, because if the children happen to have another financial planner with whom they're associated or working, those assets are going to be moved. And so the smart financial planner literally positions themselves with the children so as to retain that asset, that money under management is what they're doing. So we, like accounting professionals, using that same philosophy, we've got to be embedded with that client to the point that the new owner, whether it be the employees, family, whomever, can't see us leaving because we're so integral to the success of that business. I loved how you described that. It was very well done.
The accounting firm just knows so much about that business that it's almost irreplaceable. And again, given the breadth of an accounting firm, depending on how diverse their services are, that business, you could be in multiple departments, right, inside of that firm. So the new buyer goes, again, like, man, I couldn't possibly think about doing business without associating my business to this accounting firm, because they're just so critical, not just from an advisory capacity, but from all these services that they provide as well. 100%.
Yep. Love it. I love it. Okay. So as accounting professionals, I'd like you to help us out. I'm interested in your perspective here. Let's assume that the client, the business owner, is involved in selling the business. And as the accounting professional, we're being invited to the table to help with the sell transaction. What are some of the things you would tell us we need to be paying attention to and should be prepared to answer as we help that business owner in their behalf? Obviously, we've got that fiduciary responsibility to them, in their behalf, to help them sell the business. What are we bringing to the table as accounting professionals to that conversation?
I think that, number one, I think the general due diligence process, I think, is critical, right? So I think being well prepared. So I think that the accounting firm is either bringing to the table or asking the questions. Roger, you said we're representing the client that's selling.
Yeah, in this example, selling. But I'm going to ask you right afterwards, what's the flip side if we're now the one trying to acquire a business? What's the accountant wanting to look for in the business that's to be acquired, where we're coming in blindly and we can only look at the numbers? What do we want to ask for? What do we want to see? What do we want to look at? But this first question was, you're on the seller side. What are we bringing to the table as accounting professionals to help with the sell of the business?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that first, the financials, you heard me mention this before. I think too many accounting firms only report to the owner their tax number and not their real number. Businesses are sold on the real number, right? The real number is going to be some kind of recasted EBITDA type number. So I think that first we bring a strong understanding between the tax number and the real number and what the business is actually worth. I think that we also bring a strong sense. I'm going to go intangible on you because I think this is where 80% of the company's value is actually at, is that we have a strong understanding of the strength of what we would consider these four intangible capitals, what we call the 4 C's. We have a strong sense of their human capital, their structural capital, their social capital, and their customer capital. And I think we bring, lastly, to the table, I don't want to go maybe not necessarily too technical, but maybe too literal. I think we bring to the table a very organized due diligence process through maybe a virtual data room or a company book, where I talk about this only because I don't think owners do this as well, is that if you're a young owner, not necessarily looking to transition, you should always have that kind of company book and have everything in one kind of source of truth, if you will. And I think if you're representing a company for sale and you're coming to a prospective buyer, or think about this as not even a company sale, say we're trying to get some financing for a growth initiative that we have, if we can come with a strong sense of real number versus tax number, a strong sense of the strength of our four intangible capitals, and a full-blown documented due diligence room where people can kind of dissect our company and look through it, I think that we become very impressive to buyers and actually accelerate the due diligence and sales process.
That was really helpful. And I'm going to add, just because you were talking about intangibles, right?
Yeah.
These numbers that seem ethereal. One of the great numbers that I've really appreciated in the conversation of valuing the business is the lifetime value of a client, for example.
Sure.
We can see revenue. We can see what the average sell revenue is. We can see all these other things. But if I can bring to the table as an accountant the number that says our average customer purchases in their lifetime this many times, or in an average year this many times, right, and the average lifetime value of that customer is this amount. And if we can say we acquire brand new customers every year of this number, and we know that they usually stay with us for 7 years and they have a value of this multiple, all of a sudden I'm bringing to the table so much more insight to the numbers than just here's what we made in revenue last month. I can say, looking forward, based on the number of clients we have and knowing their lifetime value, I know that we acquired in revenue this month this much income because of what we're able to project. And that being able to intelligently articulate that in behalf of the business owner to a potential buyer as an accounting professional brings so much more weight and value to that business. So I really think what we're talking about with intangibles is something that we can quantify as accounting professionals, and that helps the whole conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it goes back to what, Roger, what you were talking about a little bit ago about, kind of strengthening that relationship. So now if I'm an accounting professional and I could talk to you about those 3 or 4 kind of major things, not only is it good for the seller, right, impressive to the buyer, but what's also impressive to the buyer is how deeply rooted into the owner's business you are.
Yeah.
If I'm on the buy side, I'm saying like, man, this accounting professional really knows a lot about this owner and their company. If we go ahead and buy this business, we might think about retaining this accounting firm because it sounds like, they really help the business owner grow and scale this company.
Perfect. This is so good. Now, let's flip it like I was mentioning a moment ago. I'm the accounting professional. I have a buyer, and the buyer is saying, help me come in, assess the business. What's the accountant looking for? What does the accountant want to see?
Yeah.
Where's that aha that I might be able to help enlighten the business buyer because of what I've found?
Yeah, I always go, and I'm from a buy side perspective. And this is the side that, we own the Exit Planning Institute, which represents mostly advisors that are helping business owners sell. But, you've put a different cap on my head, and I'm also the operating partner at Snider Premier Growth, where we're buyers of companies. So I'm on the buy side, frankly, more than the sell side. And so for me, and what I would advise the accounting professional and their buyers is that I'm more interested in when I'm buying a company, not the money that they made, right? This net profit or this EBITDA number that we're looking at, but I'm looking at what I'm more interested in. How did they make that money? And typically how they got to that revenue number or how they got to that net profit number is through these intangible capitals. And I would be first focused on which is another intangible, how owner dependent is this company? Are we able to take on this business, take on that P&L? And are we able to not only replicate that profitability of the company, but scale that profitability? And to me, I go back into the 4 C's. So if we have an owner-independent company, I would then look down into human capital, structural capital, social capital, and customer capital. Customer capital, are the customers entangled into what that owner does? Are they diversified? Are they reoccurring? Structural capital being probably the largest of the capitals. What kind of documented process and procedure? what kind of intellectual property, really the ingredients and the optimization behind how they get to that revenue and net profit number. Well, how good are their people? How long have they been there? How loyal are they? What kind of management do they have? What kind of second tier kind of management do they have? Are the employees thinking like owners? Do the employees perhaps have a mindset of value creation versus income generation? And then lastly, how critical in our social capital, how critical is the owner to that culture? I think a lot of the times in the lower middle market, certainly in the small, maybe micro market, that business owner tends to be the heartbeat of that culture, when in my opinion, it should really be the employees that bring that culture together. So how are we internally communicating? What's the vibe? What's the culture that this organization has? Does it fit, right? If I'm a buyer, maybe an individual buyer or a private equity group that's trying to add a platform, does that fit into who we are? But if I'm also doing a merger, so I'm more of the company that bought my company when I was 24, they were saying, look, we're taking it more as a merger. We're going to buy Scott's company and we're just going to blend it into what we currently do. If those 4 C's don't match my company's 4 C's, I want to make sure that blend and that integration of a company post-sale goes well as well. So I think that if I'm on the buy side, I'm more focused on how they make that money versus the money itself.
So you've brought up that you buy businesses, and that's perhaps the perspective you come through most of all. So I'm going to now ask some questions that I'm sure my listeners would love to know, because regularly when I speak of my involvement in buying and selling businesses, I get asked this by lay people. And so I'm sure this is a common question. And there are a variety of ways to value a business. There's, if I remember right, I think there's 7 standard ones, but there's the traditional EBITDA one that's thrown out. Mm-hmm. So there's a variety of ways to establish a valuation of a business. But so often what we hear in the news, what we hear in the media, is some business that's making no money, has yet to turn a profit, sells for billions of dollars.
Right.
And you talked earlier about a strategic buyer. There's ones that are buying because they're trying to enter a geographic market. There's strategic buyers in the sense that they're trying to get into the space with a particular product line. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on here. But just real quickly, in a very layman term perspective, how do we as accounting professionals talk to our clients who think they're that billion-dollar business? What's unique about those things, those particular sales, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are like unicorns, right? So I don't think a lot of companies inside of the lower middle market, probably the traditional companies that we're all working with, the ones that you drive down the street and see, not to say that these are companies that obviously power our economy, but I think that those types of, my mention to that is only that I don't know if a lot of those companies are going to these large multi-billion dollar, frankly, perhaps even public companies. I don't know if that's really a valid exit option for many people. But I honestly, if I'm advising a client and they think they're this unicorn next business or next multi-billion dollar sale, I would say, well, let's talk about it. And I think that the way we talk about it is, I believe that businesses all trade or sell within a range of multiples. So again, not to keep going back to this intangible stuff, but I would say, okay, let's look at the intangible capital. So one, what great or unique idea that you have that is so special, that is so different than everybody else. And then how strong are the people, the systems, the culture, the process, and the customers behind it? And what's the potential? And what's the potential market that you're selling into? Again, I think that what you'd find is that most companies are not like that. But I think that you'd entertain the owner's perspective by having more of a mathematical kind of conversation.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's always true is the value of anything is always in the eyes of the purchaser. Exactly. I mean, it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. So
we always talk from the buyer's perspective. It's interesting. I always, from the seller side, which is where our education is at EPI, we try to teach our business owners there to think from a buyer's perspective always, right? I think a lot of the times this is why we call it, Roger, the your baby's ugly syndrome, where it's like, right? If I showed you a picture of my daughter and at her, her 7th birthday, and Roger, you looked at her and your first comment was, man, she is ugly. Well, right? That would be wildly offensive to me. You would probably never say something like that. But I think a lot of the times buyers don't mean it to come across that way, but what they're saying to sellers is, man, I know you think you have something that's this next $1 billion valuation, but frankly, your baby's kind of ugly because of this, and this. And what they come to find is that though maybe a great idea, in order that the business is very reliant on the business owner themselves. So yeah, I think it's a critical point for the audience to grasp. What Roger said was thinking about it from a buyer's perspective. It's only worth what somebody else wants to pay for it.
Yep. So two things, just because of what you said, I've got to bring this up. First is, and it's kind of odd, but I'm going to quote myself. For years, I've been saying this to business owners, and it really helps and it does resonate. And it's the belief that a business owner needs to see their business as a living, breathing, self-sustaining entity, something that can live autonomous from the business owner. And the reason why I bring that up is because you mentioned your daughter.
Yep.
When a business owner sells their company, it's similar, in my opinion, to a parent marrying off or sending away a child, because at some point you have to let go. This thing that you've put a lot of time, energy, passion, love into, you have to let go. And when you let go, imagine it's an individual, a son or daughter marrying someone else. They're going to go start their own life. They're going to do their own thing. In fact, they're going to make decisions differently than you would have done in your own business. And that's the whole beauty of what it is. Did you create within that business a core, a value system, a culture, and influence enough that it can stay on a similar trajectory once you're gone? So that's the first thing. But here's the other interesting thing about your comment about this. You said your 7-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
So it's your 7-year-old daughter that's unattractive. The person looks at the picture and doesn't find it appealing. But what's fascinating to me is what isn't appealing to the teenager, that unique anomaly that they'd rather hide because they'd like to blend in.
Yeah.
Once they turn 20, that unique thing is in fact their unique selling proposition.
Right.
That peculiarity, that thing that's odd, all of a sudden becomes valuable because it's so unique. And so at one point, it might be an embarrassment. Another point, or another person might see it as the very selling proposition upon which they want to acquire the business. So it's all perspective, right?
Well, and you're likely, I think a good and well-positioned business will have multiple buyers, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, to your point, coming from the seller's perspective, don't get discouraged when what you thought was your ideal buyer goes, no, that's not for me. Because to your point, the next buyer might say, wow, that actually fits my model, fits our culture, and I actually find this a very unique opportunity. So don't get discouraged by one person saying that your daughter's ugly or one person saying your business is ugly, because there's somebody down the road that will likely find that quite unique.
Yes. And you know what? There are many suitors out there. You just got to find the right one. So here's where this is, I think, going to be really, really fun. As business owners, we sell the business. And I think you would have a lot to offer here. The business owner sells their business, but in our culture, the business owner, we all identify so much of who we are by what it is we do for a living. Every conversation typically will start by, what do you do? And we answer with a great deal of pride as business owners. I own my own company, and this is what I've been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years. When you sell the business, you lose that identifier. And all of a sudden, these business owners, typically, as I understand it, within 6 to 12 months, have an identity crisis. It's hard to get out of bed in the morning because they've golfed all the golf they want to, seen all the movies they wanted to, they've traveled wherever they've wanted, they've read the books that they wanted. So 6, 12, 18 months down the line, they've lost purpose, passion, and they're having to reinvent themselves. What can you say about that?
Oh man, I think that it's a struggle, and we have a whole show. We have a whole show around this. So first, it sits near and dear to my heart. As you started to say that question, I rewound my life about, I guess that would have been like 12 or 13 years ago when I sold my first company. I wandered around as a 24-year-old, right? So still pretty young dude. Have a little bit of change in my pocket as compared to the next 24-year-old person that's probably just starting their career out of college. And what I realized really, really quickly is that I had spent my almost like to that point, 16, 17 to 24, letting my business define who I was. And I had this realization, and you're right, it's the same time frame, probably about 10 to 12 months later. Well, what am I and where do I want to go? This was, being a young man, this was all I really knew. What I found is that as I entered, frankly, the first step for me as I entered my dad's consulting firm. Interestingly enough, my dad is a certified exit planning advisor. So before we were owners of EPI, my dad became certified by EPI, and he was helping business owners grow and sell. So I got into that business. What I found quickly is that I was much more in love with being an entrepreneur, working with people, bringing solutions, solving problems, and all the cool things that come with being a business owner. And then I fell into this business, right? Professional education, which is my first business was a pretty traditional landscape management firm. I actually went to school at Ohio State for horticulture. So totally outside of this. What I fell in love with, what I realized is that I really love people and solving problems and creating unique experiences that really thrust people to the next milestone of their life. But that didn't come without kind of deep investigation. And I think this is why we talk about bringing exit planning into the future. 75% of business owners profoundly regret selling their business just a year after selling it. And a quick story that I think the audience would find funny. One of our certified exit planning advisors called me up after becoming a CEPA and said, Scott, you got to talk to one of my business owners. He came to me. He was a financial planner. So he came to me after he sold his company. I'm managing the wealth that he extracted. And this guy is just totally lost. So I ended up calling this guy at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. And I'm a Monday guy. We have a big company-wide meeting at 10 a.m. every Monday. And it's a mandatory in-office day. And it's a big kind of coming together of everybody and looking at metrics and all this cool stuff. So I'm pretty kind of jacked up on Monday mornings. And so I talked to this guy before this meeting at 9, and he goes, Scott, man, you got a lot of energy for a Monday, man. I was like, yeah. And I told him a similar thing that I just told you guys. He said, man, I miss the days. You know what I'm doing? And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm in my basement in my boxer shorts. I just rolled out of bed to take this call with you. And I'm playing billiards, like pool. I'm shooting pool totally by myself. He's like, dude, I'm bored out of my mind. I'm 54 years old. I'm divorced. I have 2 kids, but they're grown and out of the house. I have nothing going on and no one that needs me. He's like, this is horrible. I wish I just kept with my company. The problem with this guy is that him and his advisors, right? Also shame on the advisors as well for not coming with this holistic approach, is that we concentrated on the business. This guy sold his business for $48 million. So a very wealthy individual.
Yep.
And it sounds like he had a decent personal financial strategy, but no one ever said, hey, man, like, what are you going to do in the next act of your life? So I think many business owners hear this all the time. Scott, stop working in your business and start working on it. They're asking me to be more strategic, more visionary. What you don't hear is, Scott, start working on your life and just stop living in it. What's your core values? What's your purpose? What's your goals? And we should be writing those down and investigating those just like we do year over year in our business strategies and business plans. Obviously, something you hit a string with me because I think it's such a shame that a guy at 54 got, $48 million for his business and he thinks it sucks. He's like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Where frankly, I can't wait for the day where I've busted my butt over decades and somebody goes, Scott, I want to pay you multi-million dollars for your company. I would say glory days, because there are plenty of things in my life that I want to do. This is one to the next stepping stone of who I am. And so I think too many business owners forget the third leg of the stool, which is the personal side. And we need to be bringing plans and strategies into our lives as a person, not just as a business owner. So critical to success.
So Scott, you've done an excellent job illustrating for us exactly my point. And I'm going to bring it up in 2 perspectives. And I don't think we have time to go down either, but I think both need to be said.
Sure.
One is the whole Ayn Rand kind of idea of we've got such innovative, successful, productive individuals in society that all of a sudden get basically, let's say, set aside because of the fact that choices are such that they make the 48 million and then they're like, I'm just done. I mean, this is,
right.
Everybody around here is bat crazy and I'm out of here. The other idea is Maslow's hierarchy of need. You get to the top, that pinnacle where you have a self-actualization and you can now give back. And you have purpose and you're saying, okay, this is my next chapter as you were describing it. This is what I'm going to put all my passion, energy, and enthusiasm behind because I'm an expert now in this space. And so I love it when I tap into someone who has at least something exciting that they want to do next. And you're right, as advisors, we need to, if we're doing a holistic approach to this, we need to say, okay, what is that next step? And I think there's that energy that we need to put there because it's in the best interest of our clients, because this is where this is going to take them next. You get the $48 million phenomenal exit, something to be proud of, but we don't need an identity crisis 10 to 12 months down the line and we call them up and they're in their boxers playing billiard by themselves. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah,
No,
totally.
This
totally
was so
agree.
good. So good. All right. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. We're winding things down. I've got to ask, you went into business with your father.
Yeah.
So many people I know, I've got a few friends that work with family. One in particular works with his dad. What's the good of that? What's the good? And what are some of the boundaries that you've established to avoid the bad?
Oh man, this is like it's another deep dive question. But I think that generally what makes Dad and I successful as business partners, as a father-son team, and in and out of the business, is we work on it. Just like your golf game, a hobby that you have, we spend deliberate and intentional time working on our relationship as partners and our relationship as father-son. And we use a tool called the Every Family's, we call it, it's from an author named Tom Deans. He wrote a book, Every Family's Business. We use something called the Family Business Blueprint. So it's a framework that allows us to ask and answer several questions each year around the business and our relationship. And we use a kind of a put it on the table, if you will, philosophy that says, look, if stuff gets hid under the table for too long, that's when big major issues arise. So you have to have a safe environment for communication, but we try to always throw things on the table so that they're discussed. And we really try to leave, we're not perfect at it by any means, but we try to leave the business in the business so that when we get together for birthdays and holidays, my mom isn't giving us the glare saying, hey, gentlemen, can we stop talking about business at the Thanksgiving table? And so, I think there are a few tools that we use to kind of harness that great relationship, but it's just consistent practice, right? It's like Michael Jordan didn't become Michael Jordan because he didn't practice. He practiced probably more than anybody else. And I think that if you looked at failing family relationships, is that there's too much stuff that's sent under the table. There's not enough put on the table for people to actually talk about. And they're not using tools to get them there, and they're just not practicing enough. But yeah, I'd like to think that Dad and I have very defined roles in our business, Roger. And I feel that we have a very nice relationship outside of the business as well. Although I think generally, just like anything else, if you have a friend in the business or anything like that you've hired, your relationship does become different, right? Like me and my dad, particularly in my younger days, would hang out more. And I think that, we do a lot of business together every single day. So your relationship changes, and that's also got to kind of be okay with you. But I think that we have a great relationship. Like I know a lot of people that are in business with their parents too, and they just friggin' hate it. And I don't get it. I think I have a really nice relationship, and I'm being genuine about it. But again, I know that we work at it quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that you work on it. It sounds very deliberate and intentional, and it looks like you're implementing strategies to intentionally try and build that relationship. And what I heard, especially with the comment about your mother, is you do have a delineation between the familiar family relation and the business relations. Like, okay, this stays at work, or it's not time to talk about that kind of a thing. Yeah. So I like that. Yeah. What have you learned from your father? You're older now. If you had to just at a moment reflect on the legacy, what your father has done for you, what's that emotional connection that you've got that you're grateful for?
I'm honestly being kind of a serial entrepreneur. I frankly, it's simple. He's taught me how to run a company, and I know it sounds kind of maybe a little bit odd because it's the methodology that we teach. But my dad wrote the book Walking to Destiny, which is all about the value acceleration methodology, what we believe is the way to run a company of significance that's aligned to the business owner's business, personal, and financial goals, right? This holistic approach that we've talked about on the show. I would say if once the book that I'll probably write in my lifetime, that'll be certainly my dad's legacy, is we're our own case study. So he's raised a son, me, as a business owner that really knows no other way of running a company other than through value acceleration. And if I had to write a book, it would probably be something around the lines of growing up through value acceleration and showcasing the journey that I've taken to not just grow a great business that hopefully one day is highly valuable and sells, but is a business or that is also an approach that has given me a great personal life and a solid financial plan. I'd like to think that the biggest thing in non-technical terms is Dad's taught me how to give a balance to life. But that balance of life has come through knowing that a business owner has these three elements floating around that always need to be aligned: business, personal, and financial. And so at a very young age, I knew that. And I was building companies at 17 and now at 37 that fit that model. And I could tell you, I got kids at home, and I got a whole other life outside of being a business owner. I don't work 80 plus hours a week like people here, business owners do. I take ample amount of time off and away from the business. So I think, that's all rooted. If you look at the foundation of that, that's all rooted in the stuff that Chris, my father, taught me, which we teach to business owners and advisors alike today.
Perfect.
I would say that's his legacy.
What do you think yours is to your children? What do you hope they're seeing in you?
Oh man, I hope they see that balance, right? I think that God, it's such a great question because I have an 8, 7, and 5-year-old. So I think that it's such a great question. I would say the same. I think I hope, I think too many people like work to live, or live to work versus I just don't. I want my kids to see a balanced lifestyle where they can say, look, I make the money that I want to make that feeds a lifestyle that I love. The lifestyle is defined. So you don't need to make millions of dollars, perhaps even to do it. But I would like them to see a very happy, balanced life and a very opportunistic one, saying not necessarily sky's the limit. Don't believe necessarily that. But I do believe that with the right work ethic, the right mentors, and the right preparation, that you will meet any opportunity when it comes. So I guess I've never been asked that question, to be totally honest with you. So that's a good one.
There you go. Well, I'm going to say your children are young. They're going to grow up quick. So enjoy them while you can. And there's a quote that I continually remind myself of, and it's basically, no success can compensate for failure in the home. And I think that is very, very true, that sometimes we get our priorities mixed up, and be there for your kids. They need you.
100%.
I'm going to wrap this up. Before I wrap it up, there's one last question real quickly. I know that you have chapters where professionals gather to make connections to build this community of advisors to actually help business owners. Real quickly, what can you say about it?
Yeah. So what the beauty of the Exit Planning Institute is that you don't necessarily need to be a quote unquote SEPA, certified exit planning advisor or member, to really be a part of it. So throughout the United States, we have Exit Planning Institute chapters that hold virtual and in-person meetings that gather a really diverse group of advisors together, anywhere from a life coach to the more traditional financial planner, CPA, attorney, and so on, where they come together to drive best practices, learn about the entire exit planning ecosystem, build those teams so that you could be the connector of people. They also conduct some pretty deep research on business owners. And then most of our chapters do something like a business owner symposium or a business owners forum, where they bring together high quality advisors and owners that are ready and willing to learn about what it takes to exit companies. So I think they make a pretty deep impact. And they hold meetings basically 10 to 12 times a year, most of them jiving along at on a monthly cadence. So if you are interested in that, simply go to epichapters.com and you can see the whole list.
Perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the episode description that URL so everyone can go there and get some information. I'm also going to put some free resources there that everyone can tap into as they're considering what they can offer their clients as they're becoming advisors and helping them work on their business. So go to the episode description, find that information there, and definitely take advantage of those resources. As a summary, I want to just kind of wrap things up, and then I'm going to come back to you, Scott, for a closing thought here. We've definitely had a long call, a good conversation, so lots of nuggets here, but just as a summary, One of the things that I wanted to start with is that there is a great deal of transition happening in the economy. And as accounting professionals, if we chose to step in as advisors, we have great opportunity to really influence a number of transactions that are going to be happening at the business level where companies are now changing hands, and we have a part to play in that, and we can easily step in with our accounting perspective and deliver a quality service that not only the seller but also the buyer could benefit from. And I encourage us to take advantage of that. I like the fact that we talked about there being a methodology. I'm passionate about the fact that going in and offering these services shouldn't be ad hoc at the, from the hip, gut feeling kind of things. We should have strategies, methodologies. And I'm glad that Scott brought up that does exist, because as advisors, we need to have some type of a system that we can take to our clients that we can follow through a proper engagement to help them actually work on their business. And I think that's helpful. I'm really appreciative of the fact that we had a conversation about the mental state of the business owners after exiting. We've got to realize that as advisors, when working with our clients, there is that holistic approach that we spoke of earlier. And we've got to recognize that even with a phenomenal exit, there's a life after the business. And what are we doing to maybe help prepare them for that? And perhaps it's introducing them to a life coach. Maybe it's helping them set up that next business that they want to start. Something to help them tap into that passion that they have and channel it. So I think that was a great discussion. I really appreciated Scott sharing also about his father. I know a lot of family businesses. I know a lot of people that work with siblings, spouses, parents, and really to hear him say that they've established some boundaries, they intentionally work on how that relationship's going to work, and they've been able to maintain it, and they work on both the familiar and the professional, and I think that's very important. The other thing that I thought Scott said at the very end there was so helpful was the importance of family. I couldn't stress or emphasize that enough. I think family is hugely important, and it shouldn't or can't be neglected. It just has so many ripple effects, whether it be good or bad, consequences, good or bad. And I think it's very important that we be that example for our children. And I'm glad, Scott, that you're doing just that for your own. Lots of great nuggets in this conversation, Scott. Lots of good things. So thank you for that. What's your closing thought?
Yeah, I think that the accounting firm in particular has a great opportunity to be the owner's most trusted and valued advisor. My question to all inside of those accounting firms are you going to be prepared when that call comes? So if you're interested in that, Exit Planning Institute certainly has a place for you, whether it's attending the chapter meetings or something much, much deeper. But nonetheless, I think that, and I'd love for the accounting firms to really take hold and harness that opportunity to really help these owners drive significant companies, which in fact does have an economic and social impact. And so I think it's very purposeful work.
Excellent. Scott, thank you so much for this. As a conclusion, let me just encourage you, if you've not already, to subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you get notifications of each and every episode as we release those. We have new episodes at least weekly where we bring on the experts and have them share with us thoughts and tips and tricks on how we can work on our business to, in fact, have the premier accounting firm. Also, go back to our previous episodes and listen to some of those great gems of information that we've acquired now over the more than 2 years of doing this show. And it's in that you're going to find, I think, the different things that you're needing to, in fact, work on your business. So again, subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to follow us, set your notifications to get notified, and check out the past episodes. As well, if you would like to learn more about these principles and others, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us at 801-265-3777, or you can visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day, and be safe out there.